uh, Facebook. So, okay, welcome back to day 3 of your Make a Ripple challenge. So I want to focus today on impact and what that means for us. So how did everybody do with the perspective yesterday? We've talked about passion and perspective. Did you have fun with this exercise about figuring out all the different things that make up your perspective and how that might affect you?
I enjoyed it. It was good.
I thought it was great that until we become more aware of who we really are, we are our perspective.
Oh, that's insightful, Marilyn. I like that. Yeah. Yeah, because so many things that make up our perspective come from outside of us. And so when we do become aware of those things, then we can make a conscious choice, as I think probably all of us have done in some way in our lives. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll dive into impact today. Okay, here we are, day 3, impact. Oh, keeps going back to the beginning. Sorry, if I made you a little dizzy looking at all that stuff. But so impact, I want to get into this today because this is really the juicy part of dipping our toes into our passion and our perspective. What my goal with having you answer questions about that was to really get into, where does your impact come from? Where do these passions about how you want to make a difference in the world, where does that all come from? What affects it? So I want to give you an example of this inspirational author that I've been working with for a few years. His name is Barry Overton. I was going to say the name of his book, Ignite Your Greatness. Barry is a great example of how he wanted to make his impact and how he has brought that forward into the world in several different ways, one of which is becoming a best-selling author. Barry came to me with this idea that he wanted to prove to his readers and to everyone that we have greatness within us, that everyone has greatness within. And he was on fire with this message. And so his book goes through all kinds of steps to show you, to prove to you that you have greatness within. So it's a theory that he proves. And throughout the book, he has these exercises that you go through to help not just prove it to you, but to help you bring it into your everyday life. So it's not just a lofty theory, it's actually boots on the ground. How do you do this day to day? How do you make it real in your life? And that's what makes his book so effective. But back to his backstory, I want to give you guys a little bit of his passions and perspective, right? So Barry came from a background of generational poverty, and he was the youngest in his family. So he had the opportunity to look around him and see what was going on with people in his family, in his community. And he saw that some were falling into the gang life. You know, yeah, they were probably making some money, but they were making some choices that he did not want to have anything to do with. And so he made that choice early on. He wanted to avoid going down that road. But then what were his options? Well, fortunately, he also had an uncle who had risen above that generational poverty and gang life. And he had made a successful life for himself and his family, and was also really involved in doing good things for his community as a police officer. And so Barry took this on at a very young age. This was his perspective. He was looking around saying, okay, I want to get out of where I am now. How do I do that? So he became very passionate about serving his community, about getting involved with things that were positive in people's lives, having a positive impact even from a young age. And he has this fun story in the book where he talks about he was even influenced by superheroes, right? So he would put on a cape and really act it out, but he felt it. He knew he was a superhero in some way. He knew he had greatness within himself, and he wanted to bring that out. So that was just something that he came into this world with really young, that he connected with that kind of energy and knew that he had this energy and power that he wanted to bring to the world. So it's a fun story, but it's really fun to see now how that's come full circle for him as an author and a speaker. So when he speaks, now he does different things. He's a retired police officer now. And he's doing a lot of other things, including speaking. So even if you follow him on social media, he's a good one to get inspiration from, because his stuff is full of fire. It's full of passion. It's full of his perspective that we can continually grow and get better and improve on our circumstances, and at the same time, give back to the community. He's very involved in serving police officers and his community, teens. He's everywhere all the time. I don't know how he does it all, but he's an inspiration. So you can see the fire and passion that he brings to his work and his message on an ongoing basis. So all of that helps people connect with him, understand who he is, and connect with their own passions and their own greatness, right? Like this energy that's coming out from his chest on his book cover. People really connect with that. They know they have some kind of light within. And I think all of us who want to bring our message to the world, our passions and our impact to the world, we have some of that too. And we want to share that. We want to spark that with others. So how do you do that? Well, Barry does speaking. And as I always say, when you're on stage, and if any of you have done speaking, and I know at least some of you have, you know that people fall a little bit in love with you when you're on the stage, right? They connect with you on a personal level. They feel your passion and are impacted by you, and they fall a little bit in love with you. So they want to take a little piece of you home with them. And that piece that they can take home is your book. It's your workshops and other things that you are doing, but your book really helps them go deep with you about how you see the world, how you have brought your unique perspective and your passions to make an impact. So what does that mean? What is an impact that you want to make? Has everybody done their questions in the workbook? So I'd love to hear anything you want to share about the questions in the workbook about impact. Did you start from the inside out and go kind of out to the outer circles of how you want to make a ripple? You can unmute and just jump in anytime. If you have a question about how you might want to answer some of those questions. And give us an example, or put it in the chat about some way that you want to make an impact in a small way, like on yourself or in your family.
We're a chatty bunch today.
Just jump in, everybody. It's a safe place. Jennifer says, I want people to drink and enjoy better coffee. Yes, I've had mine already today. Gonna need to learn more about your coffee, Jennifer. So some of the ways we want to impact ourselves is just, we want to continue to grow. We want to continue that personal development. I mean, that's why I've been reading personal development books since I was 14 years old. I knew there was something else, something out there that I wanted to improve on, that I could learn from other people. Marilyn says, empower people to realize the power they have to stop being a puppet to their beliefs and become the CEO of their life. That's awesome. Very powerful statement, Marilyn. And Tim, I want to stop the cycle of lack of self-care in my family. Yeah. In a bigger way, I want to change the way the world is educated. Yes. So, Tim, do you mind if I ask you to dig deep on this a little bit? I'd love to know about that.
Sure.
Without giving too much detail, but what does that mean to do better self-care in your family?
Yeah, I think I've been realizing, I mean, over the time, just like there's this cycle of over giving and over consuming that happens. It's not just about food, it's about all the things in your life, and taking on so much that you can't take care of yourself. And ultimately, like, it's one of my perspective shifts, I guess, is that you can't really help other people until you help yourself first, and I think there's a lot of people in the world, and this is my own beliefs, but like there's a lot of people in the world who it's like, oh, I'm just give, and there's the other side that's like just take, but there's like nothing, there's the actual sort of balance here of like really becoming someone who can hold that space for other people while still like maintaining your own self-care and self-reliance. And that balance, I talk sometimes about, like, it's this kind of concept of like the duality between like self-reliance and interdependence, and especially in the like culture that we have, and where just everything is online and you can see into everybody's life and everything is so interconnected. But I often view it as like almost like a web, right, across the world, and like each person is responsible for holding up their corner of the web, and like that's the only way that, like, and the only you help people by helping them hold up their piece, but the more you can hold, the more other people can like get back up with you and raise for the vibration of all of that. So
right. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for playing, Tim. I appreciate you. It makes me think of, we were talking in the Unleash Your Inner Author cohort yesterday about overwhelm and how we can get really, I call it being crispy around the edges. It's that warning sign for me that I'm about to burn out. I'm about to get into that burnout feeling, and it's the message that, hey, you're not taking good enough care of yourself. You're not getting enough rest. You're not doing the things that you need to do for yourself, because it does definitely start with you and move outward into the world, and has a huge ripple. We talk a lot about this too in my courses, because we always talk about three things in the course, and that's scoop up gratitude. We talk about clearing your path. What do you need to get rid of to be able to get your message across, to take better care of yourself, to make the impact that you want to make in the world? And we talk about making a ripple. How are we making a ripple? And that's everything from what you just said, Tim, so beautifully, about taking care of yourself. And that goes out, and it does affect everyone around you, and, has a ripple effect going outward into the world. So super important. And impact definitely starts with you. So yeah, thank you for saying that and for sharing that. So in sharing your stories, like all of us have all these stories that we can share with the world and help make our impact. And Tim just shared one with us, so thank you for that. So the last question in this impact section, and if you haven't spent time on this yet, please go back in the workbook. If you're watching this later, please go back in the workbook and look at this section. I think this is really where the rubber meets the road, how all these things in your life add up to you, the unique you are, showing up as the authentic person who can make this powerful impact. So I think this last question is kind of fun. If you haven't thought about this yet, if you had to come up with a title for your story, your life, or your book today, what would that be? Anybody want to share what that is? You can do that in the chat or pop in, like my next book. We talk about confronting all these fears, and that's what my next book is about. And it really follows my life story, which is overcoming fears. Like today, I'm on video, live on video. That used to scare the daylights out of me. And it still makes me a little nervous, but I show up and I do it. And then I learn I can do it. It makes me stronger, makes me be able to have bigger dreams next time. Well, if I can do this, what else can I do? So the title of my upcoming book is Unleash Your Impact and Overcome, the subtitle, I'm still working on that, but it's about reclaiming the power that we give over to fears and reclaiming that so that we can make that impact. Okay, here we go. Tim will says, I've known for a while. It's called Don't Freak Out. I love that, Tim. We've talked about that before. And Marilyn's is The Way Out. Yeah.
I just want to say, I've always, like, the name of my book has been 10 Coffees to Know. But the way you're framing things, and to think like, what if it were a New York Times bestseller? Like that on its own is never going to be a bestseller. It's more of like a resource. But you're just making me think about tying in other parts, which I mean, I really do want people, there's so much trickle down from people tasting a better cup of coffee than just drinking a good cup of coffee. And so there's like this whole halo to that. So anyway, my brain's kind of spinning on a new title.
Yeah. And what I think from a reader standpoint, Jennifer, what would be interesting is to know, why are you so passionate about coffee? Why does this matter so much to you? What has been your journey with it? So rather than just, I mean, there's the resource aspect of the book, which is great. All the books that we do have that sort of real life resource aspect, but what's really interesting in how you connect most with the readers is through your personal story and your passions. That's where they go, oh, okay, Jennifer's someone I can connect with. I can understand. I have a similar passion. I wonder what her perspective is, why it's so important, and what your journey is to get to that. and why you want to put it out there in the world. So I think that could be a New York Times bestseller, because there's a lot of, there are a lot of aspects to how we get to our passions and how that affects other parts of our lives. Because what does the importance of having a great cup of coffee, a really, really wonderful cup of coffee, what effect does that have on our lives? It helps us it brings us joy. It brings us enjoyment. It can bring us
Clarity.
yeah, and it's a part, yeah, clarity, right? Exactly. Clarity enough to get up in the morning and think, but also it's like self-care. If you want to have that better quality of life, you maybe will indulge in a wonderful cup of coffee and healthy food and great conversations and all that stuff. There is a trickle down that affects the rest of your life. And Tim keeps coming up with more more titles. You're the solution.
That's Marilyn.
Never
It's
too late.
Marilyn.
Living a roller coaster life and finding joy.
I was
Co-
awesome.
I'll say Tim's even coming up with titles for you now, Jennifer.
Awesome.
Coffee is the key, or I need coffee,
Yes.
or a couple of cool book titles. Thanks, Tim. See, this is the wonderful aspect of community, is that you get this brainstorming going on with the energy of the community, of the people who are present, and that's so fun. And that's a really, really important part of Unleash Your Inner Author courses too, is because we do it as a community.
And just as, to piggyback on that, just listening, it's like, that was my first thought, Jennifer, was when I realized that coffee was your thing. It was like, I'm interested in knowing, like, why? And the same with you, Tim. It's like, it's just how people think, they're like, I wonder why that's their focus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really interested in both the topics. They're both great.
Yeah.
That was yours. That word puppet is so, yeah, it's a scary word. And CEO is so powerful.
Yeah, it is. It's empowering, makes me kind of want to sit up straighter and go, oh, I'm the CEO of my life.
I also, I did the one about living the roller coaster life and finding joy. And I'm going to start my book with a chapter when I was 3 years old, and my dad and my grandpa took me on a roller coaster, and I loved it. And I wanted to go back again and again and again, and how it's kind of set the example of my life, and with some extreme lows and some extreme highs, and how now at my advanced age, I can put it all together and see how valuable that experience was for me in going, in and out of a marriage, in and out of heartbreak, in and out of feeling inadequate, and moving into a place of saying, wow, from this perspective, I can see that every step of the way, there was some sort of divine plan that was in work. And I want to encourage everyone here, that's reading my book, to get how possibly every moment of their life too has been a divine plan to get them to where they want to be.
Yeah. Beautiful. That's a powerful impact, because you can have a generational effect then, when you're impacting people who are at wouldn't it be wonderful for people to have that aha moment when they're younger, so that they can enjoy and also have that perspective of when something bad happens, that, okay, maybe there's something to learn, maybe there's a silver lining, there's it's all part of the path. So thanks for sharing that, Marilyn. So now, I feel so inspired by everybody's ideas and impact that you want to make. Are you inspired yourselves? How do you feel right now?
Good.
Good. Yeah. So I think, this exercise really help us focus on the power that we do have, the impact that we can make. And we can bring that into our books, into our message, our movements, whatever we're doing. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what might be next for you when you decide to write your book and come out with your story, what that might look like for you. So a lot of times the things that hold people back and why they never do it is they don't know where to start. It can be sort of a big, hairy, audacious goal that seems too big to wrap your hands around. But so it just keeps them stuck. Even Barry, he told me he had been thinking about this book and had been doing research on it for 4 years. He was just stuck in doing whatever research he felt like he needed to do. And so that's when, when he reached out to get support with that is when he actually got it done. They don't know all the steps. What does it take? What does it look like? How do you break it down into pieces that are actually doable? They don't have support. They don't know, a lot of people write their books in isolation. And they may work on them for years. And then when they're finally ready to hand it over to somebody, and this has happened to me as an editor multiple times. And it's really one of the reasons I'm a book coach now, is because I would get these manuscripts that were done and I take a look at them and there are definitely strong points in all of them, but there were a lot of missing pieces and weak points too, where it made the person have to really go back and do a ton of rework to make that book ready for publication. So it's a much better path in terms of heartbreak to get some support up front and to get some structure and knowing how the whole thing works so that you can produce a book and have something really wonderful at the end, to be able to hand that to an editor and have it ready for publication. So that's one of our goals too. And fears. Things come up as you're doing this. The kinds of books that we're talking about, where you're telling some personal stories and really looking at yourself and looking at some of the maybe traumatic things that happened to you. Marilyn and Tim were both talking about the roller coaster, the ups and downs. Sometimes those downs are hard to look at. Sometimes the things that we think are failures in the past are hard to look at. And so those will come up and grab you when you're writing your book. And so that's having some support and having a community along the way really helps to overcome those, as well as my new book, which I'm incorporating into the course too, how to overcome all those fears and some ideas about that. So in the course and the cohort that we're starting next month, and in all the Unleash Your Inner Author program, we start with clarity. So a lot of programs will just say, okay, go write 10,000 words. But what are you writing those words about, and who are you writing them for? So the first part of the program is really about discovering your vision and mission. And we've spent some time doing that this week in the Make a Ripple Challenge. What we've done is just hit the very tip of the iceberg. And in the course, we go through a series of exercises to help you really figure out and be able to state in a clear way your vision and mission. Understand deeply your ideal readers, which I call your reader soulmates. These are the people who are most going to connect with you and your message. And then your goals and dreams as an author. So not just your fears, but your highest hopes for your readers and for yourself as an author and a business person. So we create your roadmap, and now you can start writing, because now you're very clear on what you're writing, who you're writing it for, and what the end goals are. What are your takeaways? What are those biggest things that you want people to close the book and go, oh, that changed my life in some way. And they're going to tell everybody else about it too. So that's an important piece. And then the goal of the Unleash Your Inner Author course is to give you the, not just the tools, but the courage, the skills and the courage to write your book and complete your manuscript of your book. So the next step is to call me. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation about what your impact is, what your biggest dreams are, what your fears are, and how it might look to overcome those things. It's a free conversation. It's very casual. I just want to get to know you and to understand the impact that you want to make, and to find out if the course is a good fit for you, if it's possible for me to support you on your journey. So that next step is in the chat. Connect with Amy. It's this, it's how to book a half-hour call with me so we can get to know each other better and talk about your book ideas. All right. Any questions? What comes up for you as we close this Thursday of Make a Ripple?
Feeling Ripley.
What'd you say? Feeling Ripley? It took me a second, Tim. Yeah, you're always out there making a ripple, I know. Yeah. So any questions about the course or what that looks like, we can talk about on our call. You can always also go to my website, which is Unleash Your Inner Author. And I encourage you, I've used a few examples this week with myself, with Ann Foystel with her book, and with Barry's book today. You can see those all on my website under the author spotlight. So I encourage you to go there and see the other people who started out just like you, a normal person with an idea and a passion and a unique perspective, who have turned their message into a book that's now having an exponential impact. So thank you all for playing with me this week and for being here. And if you're watching this later, I hope that you work through the workbook and discover some new things about yourself and find out how you can unleash your inner author and make a huge ripple in the world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thanks for being here. And I will make an announcement today in the follow-up email about drawing winners. So make sure you open up that email and so you can collect your drawing prizes. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day. I'm looking forward to talking with you all soon.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.